Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about photographing groups. So I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York. I make videos like this about technique and philosophy, and this I'm going to do without actually a group to photograph, and I'm going to answer a few questions I get a lot. So by the way, I know I said I was editing the video on how I make these vlogs, but it's a beautiful day and I didn't want to sit inside editing, so I'm walking around and and this is a question I get a lot, so I thought, hey, you know what, I will ooh, the Osmo's following me. I'll talk about this. There's two parts to this. Number one is the question I get a lot is, when you're lighting a group and you want to use a light meter, where do you meter? So this comes down to the idea, both of these things have to do with distance to subject, right? All this is super important. When you think about lighting a group, what you want to make sure you're doing is lighting them evenly, right? So where do you meter really is everywhere, right? You want to meter around the group, you want to meter people in the center, you want to meter people to the side. If there's different rows, you want to meter people in the back. You basically want to meter all around. And while you're probably not going to get it exactly even, you want to get it pretty close. You know, you got to think about your camera has a certain range. If you're within half a stop or so, that's usually pretty good for most cameras. And that will allow you to kind of flatten it or pull it up or whatever in post if need be. But essentially you want to make it as even as possible across the whole group. Now, how do we do that? We do that by using larger sources and pulling them further back. It's one of the reasons why I say to use something like an umbrella that's not going to control your light and just put it in one spot. It's going to throw it out there, right? Like a bounce umbrella is one of the best things you can use for group shots. Or a lot of times if I'm doing group shots and I want to keep it really flat, I'll use like 2V flats. You guys probably see me do that before on single people, but I do that for groups too. I move 2V flats behind me, bounce lights off of it if I can, like in my studio. When on location, umbrellas are your friends, man. Umbrellas are going to allow you to throw the light everywhere. They're relatively large generally, right, for how much space they take to carry, and you can back those bad boys up and boom. Ideally, you know how many, right? That's going to be the next question. You definitely want at least two, right? You want them on either side of the camera to make it even. You might want one behind the camera as well. It really depends on the size of your group. When I say umbrellas, kind of up high, slightly tilted, because think about distance and everything, you're going to find that you're going to get even light, and that's what you want. You want the light to be as even as possible. So if, for instance, I was shooting, let's say, a group, and let's say it's 3 rows back, and I was able to get 5.6.5 on the front row. Well, that'd be the opposite. So, let me start with that. So I was able to get, let's say, 5.6 in the back row, 5.6.5, and then f8 in the front. That's not going to be, that's going to be about a stop between the two, right? So what I would probably do there is I would actually expose in the middle, so the front people are a little bit hot and the back people are a little bit dark, and then again you would flatten it down if your camera didn't have just out of camera dynamic range to handle that. Shoot it as flat as possible is the key. A full stop is a lot. I'd try to get it closer than that, but like that's about the tolerance that most cameras can maybe handle. So that's basically how you handle lighting groups. I could show a bunch of videos doing it, but in essence, that's all it really is, right? And the same thing is true of product photography. If you're shooting a bunch of products in a line or whatever, you just want to get it as even as possible. That's the key if you're looking for an even exposure. Now, the second thing that I always get asked here too, which is, you're probably already thinking this, is where do I focus? Again, this is where distance makes a difference. I guess I should roll back. I mentioned distance making a difference, but then I didn't say. So think about the inverse square law, right? When you're looking about lights, right? So the inverse square law, go ahead, Google it, whatever. But basically what it says is the closer the light is to you, the faster the fall off will be, right? So essentially what that means is by moving our lights further back, we'll be able to get, like if I take the same light and I put it here on me, right? And I've got a person standing next to me, they're going to be dark and I'm going to be bright. But if I back it out, way out here, then we can theoretically get a similar exposure by backing the light further away. So larger lights backed up using the inverse square law to make it even. If I didn't say it at the very beginning, I'm not sure. Same thing is true for the focus, right? Where do you focus? Well, again, you're going to have to find a happy medium. In any particular photo, there is only one spot, one plane that is absolutely in focus. So everything else is within the depth of field, right? You typically have more depth of field beyond the primary focus point than you do in front of it, right? So if you're shooting a very deep group, you're definitely not going to want to shoot focus necessarily on the front row, but you don't want to focus in the middle either. You want to focus like a little bit closer to the front. So what you're going to do there is you're going to make sure you're closing down your f-stop, but then you're also going to back up, because one of the main factors in how much depth of field you have is how close you are to the subject. Being further away is going to give you more depth of field. Then make a lens selection based on framing up the people the way you want them, right? That's why we have different lenses. So, and I know certain lenses are cut certain ways and some are good for this and some people are going to tell you to use this and this, but the reality is this. Forgetting about style, just talking about science and making this work. You want to be a little bit further back so that you can get them in focus. The further away you are, the more focus you'll get with the same exact aperture. So when shooting groups, having more space is going to be your friend. That's really key. Much more so than closing down your aperture, because one of the things about closing down your aperture is that if you close it down too much, it starts to get a little bit softer. Most lenses aren't good like that. Okay guys, had to stop for a second. Hikers going by. I didn't want to have to bust up the Mahler releases. So anyways, I was done anyways. So really the answer to all of this stuff is distance, right? Keeping a distance between you and your subjects is going to allow you to have more even light, keeping the lights farther away is going to allow the light to be more even. It is going to make it harder, of course, but that's why I use big sources. And being further back is going to give you more depth of field just by its nature. So that's really the key to shooting groups. Hopefully that's super helpful, guys. Let me know what other questions you have and I'll make more videos like this. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. I can watch the camera follow me so I don't have a tree come out of my head because I'm waiting for that comment. Go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell so you get all notifications, and I'll see you tomorrow.